I answer your questions. What is good, YouTube? It's that one camera guy back at again with another video for you. It's been a while for those of you that follow what I do. Been really busy. Just started up work again, and so still trying to get those videos out for you, those reviews that you guys are looking out for. But they still are in the back of my mind. But yeah, I just started getting back to work and very busy, very busy. So they will be here soon. All right, so as you know, this is the video where I take all the questions I got from the last Q&A video and as well as questions sprinkled throughout my other YouTube videos, and I go ahead and answer them kind of in a rapid fire succession, or however you would say that. So let's go ahead and get started. Question from Jacksonelli Fotografia. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Which one is better, Sony a6500 or the Sony a7 II? I prefer the a6500 because it's more of a Swiss Army knife, does 4K, 120 frames per second, has better autofocusing capabilities than the a7 Mark II, and I think it's just an overall better package, especially it's a smaller form factor. If I was going to do more portraits than video, then the a7 II would be my go-to, but yeah, the 6500 is just a really great all-around. The 9 Squares asked, I need an alternative lens for the Zeiss 24mm f1.8. Any suggestions? I'm gonna do a test at some point where I compare the Artisan 25mm f1.8, I think it is, versus the Zeiss 24mm f1.8 and compare their sharpness and performance. Obviously the Zeiss, the one you're preferring, is autofocus, but I don't think there's any other one at that particular focal length range which autofocus and that's sharp. So if anyone can correct me, please, I would need your help. Let me know if there's a one you can recommend for that. Jet Smacked PS asked, well, he's seeing a $300 difference if you get a used bodice lens over the Sony 85 f1.8. He's wondering if that's the case, is the bodice 85 worth $300 more? It just goes back to optical stabilization or lens stabilization. If you need it, then it makes sense. If not, the Sony is just fine. All right, question from Randy Alviencia. Not sure if I'm saying that right, but says, just subscribed. I'm about to buy my first camera. My budget is $600 to $700. Do you think I'm better off going with the Sony a6000 kit lens and spend on manual focus lens like the Newer or Makey, or the Sony a6000 body only plus the Sony 35 f1.8? I'll have to save more money though. Thank you very much. And I mainly do portraits and video making. If you're the kind of person that manually focuses for video, then the manual focus route makes a lot of sense and you're going to save a lot more money and you're going to have more flexibility and options. If you're the kind of person that needs continuous autofocus for your video type work, then that's a different story. So the Sony 35 f1.8 makes a lot more sense for you, especially on the a6000. I can't really tell you what's going to be best for you. It just depends on what style you do. But for portraits, manual focus primes will be good too because, well, the subject's not really moving, I'm assuming. And you could probably do manual focus and you'll have a lot better, cheaper options with manual focus primes. So if it was me personally, and in your case, I would go with a6000 plus kit lens and manual focus lenses. Ty Lee asks, can you do a review on the Sony 18-200 lens or the Tamron 18-200? I took mostly landscape and buildings during my travel. Thanks. You know what? I'll ask Tamron if they're willing to send me an 18-200. We'll see. So Mr. Hark asked, really useful video. I have a question. If I use the 55-210 on the Sony a5000, which is a crop sensor, does it actually mean that I have to multiply the aperture by 1.5 in order to find out the actual settings? And does it mean that I lose sharpness in megapixels? Thank you. Now, the 55-210 is designed for the APS-C sensor, so your a5000 is using an appropriate lens for that body, and vice versa. The lens is appropriate for that camera body that you're using. Now, there could be some arguments with this, but the safe one to mention is that if you're always comparing it back to a full frame 35mm equivalent sensor in respects to that, or a full frame kind of film camera. So you multiply by 1.5. You're absolutely right. As far as focal length, you multiply by 1.5 and you get the effective crop value in terms of 35mm full frame. So you would take 55 and multiply by 1.5 to get the actual effective focal length. and you would multiply 210 by 1.5 to get that. Now you might be wondering, do you multiply the aperture value to get the effective aperture value at that range? And I think there's a lot of questions about this, and others have said that yes, if you multiply by 1.5, you would get the effective aperture in comparison to full frame with regards to its effect on the depth of field. On the contrary, it does not change the actual exposure value, I would assume. So for example, when they say at 55, the lens is 4.5 aperture, that is the actual aperture. It's 4.5. It doesn't mean you multiply by 1.5 and then the exposure goes to, I don't know, 6.3 or something. I don't know the exact number, but the point being, that new number does not imply that that is the actual exposure you're getting from that lens. So I probably just confused you more than that. Hopefully someone else can chime in. I'm sure we'll have a lot of colorful language with regards to this topic because it has some contention, I believe. Ravi Pramana asked another question this week. He said, one more thing. Do you need to use picture profiles with S-Log3 for photography? In other words, should you use the S-Log3 profile when you're taking pictures? You know, I used picture profiles like S-Log2 for a little while when I was shooting my pictures. It did make it look flat, but I just went back to just shooting RAW and just using a standard picture profile. Didn't have any issues. I think obviously if you shoot in RAW, you're getting the most information that the sensor will capture. So I would just shoot in RAW. That's my thing. And I don't shoot in S-Log3 for photos. One American asks, hi, do you know if the focus hold button works on the 85 f1.8 on the Sony a6000? Thanks. I had to look this up. I was doing some tests. And here's the thing. The a6000 does not give you the option to customize a focus hold button. In other words, if you go to the custom settings inside of the camera, you can't say that, you can't make the focus hold button do autofocus or something like that, or make it do change ISO. It doesn't even give you that choice. However, it does still function as a focus hold button. So for example, if you're using autofocus continuous, or let's say AFS, you hold the shutter button down, you acquire focus, and then you hold the focus hold button. If you try to take a picture again and adjust your focus, it will not change. It will obviously hold your focus. So the button still works as it is intended for. It's just you can't customize it any further on the a6000. Sin3D asked, I have the a6000 with a kit lens. I'm looking to get a manual lens, but wanted to get some tips on photographing candid shoots with my kids, 4 and 1 year olds. They move a lot and my shots are blurry. I'm still playing around with the camera to get used to it. I want to get into portraits as a hobby and not professional. By the way, great content and videos. I'm still learning though. You know, I don't know if I covered this in my a6000 guide or not, but I recommend using autofocus continuous, and you're going to want to activate lock-on AF, especially for your moving subjects and your kids. I would avoid manual focus lenses if your kids are running around a lot. You're gonna have definitely get blurry photos. But yes, I do have a guide for the a6000, so if you ever get a chance, check those out, and that will give you some guidance as far as the setup here. Tora Visuals asks, great video. I have a question. I just bought my first camera, the a6000. I've done a lot of research on it before, but the package that I bought came with a really good prime manual focus lens. The problem is I am so used to finding my focus with manual that the other day I used a 55-210 and I was confused on how to get subjects in focus along with some subjects in the background. Long story short, what are the settings on my camera to have my own autofocus options? Do you have a video that teaches us how to use autofocus lenses? Thank you. Great vid, and keep working hard. On the a6000, I pretty much designate my autofocus settings by pressing the function option, which will give me access to my autofocus, my focus modes, as well as my focus area. And that's where I usually mess with it. Now, if you want to go and use manual focus on your 55-210, you'll have to change your focus mode to MF or DMF, which will allow you to manually focus that lens. Now, DMF is a little bit different. You'll have to look into that. In focus area, you can change that as well, as far as where you want your focus points to be or coverage. And then I usually use lock-on AF as well with my a6000. So yeah, I think I might work on a video specifically about those photographic autofocus situations, so hopefully that might help you out. RA83SH, I don't know if that's Rabosh or so. Greetings from Brazil. Your videos are inspirational and informative. Closely following for your awesome future videos. I have an a6000 with the Zeiss 16-35 f4 and a Sony 50mm f1.8 OSS. I do weddings and portraits photography. What lens should I go by next? I would probably consider looking at a 70-200, maybe the f4 if your budget allows the f2.8. Victor W asked, I have an a6000. I do a lot of hiking and landscape and outdoor portrait photography. I am looking to upgrade my kit lens. Any suggestions for a wide to long zoom range? Is the 18-105 something to look at? Also for portraits, should I look at the 50-1.8 or the 85-1.8? Let me tackle the portraits first. If you are going to do portraits, I think technically the 85 f1.8 is going to give you the best bokeh and the best image quality. The 50mm will give you a good working focal range. The 85 will be just a little bit harder to work with because you'll have to back up, especially if you're doing portraits. The 50 will be your conventional 85 on crop sensor. With regards to landscape and outdoor portrait photography, I've never used these lenses, but there is a Sony 18-200 and there's also a 24-200, I believe. Those are really long zoom lenses and they may not provide the best optical quality, but they are kind of like an all-in-one lens where you just have to take one lens and it'll take care of all your needs. I don't do landscapes and outdoor portrait photography, so hopefully someone in the comments and my viewers can provide some suggestions if you do this type of stuff. Austin Mays asked, please help me, does the Metabones, is it worth the extra dollars in comparison to MC11? It always goes back to what do you do, what lenses do you have, and how do you shoot, and also the camera body. If you're using the a6500, I think the MC11 is going to be a good fit for most people, and it's a cost-effective option. If you have a lot of Canon, old school Canon lenses, well, not old school in the sense that way, but if you have a lot of Canon EF lenses and you want the most compatibility with it, then the Metabones adapter makes a lot more sense. If you have a lot more Sigma glass, then the Sigma MC11 makes a lot more sense there. So that's how I would look at it. If you have more Canon glass, get the Metabones, makes more sense. If you have more Sigma glass, get the MC11. Matthias Wiria asks, I have an a6300 and I updated to the version 2 firmware, and I have overheating icon on my display camera, always on. The icon overheating will disappear if I change from photo mode to video mode. And when I go to change the photo mode again, the icon will be on again. That's really odd. Did you activate the extended temperature option inside the Alpha 6300? And the other thing I would say is, for me personally, I would see the overheating indicator disappear when I did the opposite. There was times when I'd be recording video, I'd be in video mode and I would see it, and as soon as I switched to photo mode, it went away. So, you know, I don't know if it's staying on and you just barely turned it on. There could be something wrong with the camera. So I wish I could give you some more assistance. You may have to contact Sony Pro support and see, or just Sony support in general, to see if they can get an answer for you. Salman MKC asks, should I sell my A7S now or wait till the A7 III comes out? The thing is, we don't really know when the A7 III will be officially out. The prediction is an announcement will happen in the fall or closer towards the end of the year, and the camera may be out next year. So my other question is, are you losing money by selling your A7S by doing work? Like, are you doing work? Are you recording things that you get paid for? If not, then I guess just sell it. I mean, if there's nothing you're doing that has any impact at the time, then do it. But you are taking a risk. You don't know if the A7 III is going to have exactly what you want. More than likely, you'll have 4K. And some better options than before, but I don't know specifically what your needs are. The A7S benefit, you don't even get internal 4K, so I mean, you're already up in that regards. I just don't know low light performance, if A7S low light performance was important to you. Amber Brown asked, if I bought the Sigma 18-35 f1.8, should I buy the Canon or the Sony mount? I had the 70D and a 6500 with the MC11 adapter, but 90% of the time I use the Sony. I think the recommendation would go the route of get the version that you have the most chance of using it for. So since you have a Canon camera, get the EF model. I can't really say without a doubt that the Sony version will give you better autofocus performance, but from my experience, the Sigma MC11 does a really good job already with the Canon EF version with the a6500. Samuel Tan asked, I'm thinking of upgrading my lens under a budget of $1,000. What would be the best lens you would recommend for the a6000? The criteria would be in terms of sharpness and picture quality. Size and compactness is not taken into consideration. Food and street stuff, I think the Zeiss 24mm f1.8 would be one to look at. Very sharp lens. I don't personally own it, but it's been recommended. Robert Westervelt, quick question. First great video. I appreciate what you do. Here's my question. I'm really into still photography and really have little use for video. Just need a small camera that shoots well in low light. Will the a6000 be good enough or should I spend on the a6500? I currently shoot with the Nikon D3300. Your opinion would be greatly appreciated. To be honest with you, if you got the a6000 if you compare the a6000 and D3300, in terms of low light performance, they're pretty much going to be similar. It's just your lenses. So you're asking whether one or the other would shoot better in low light. I would say the D3300 probably would do a little bit better. They're probably close, in my opinion, for low light stuff. It's just the lens that you choose will determine that. So if you look at the Nikon side, you can get yourself a fairly good 35 f1.8 for about less than $200. If you go to right up the a6000, you're looking at $300 to $400 for a 35mm f1.8. I don't know. It's a really tough situation. That's the way I would look at it. Should you spend more on the a6500? I don't think it's necessary if you're just looking at still photography. Sasuke Harrison asked, I guess to sum it up really quick, she's shooting lifestyle photos for her jewelry store and she's getting a lot of purple fringing and or chromatic aberration with the 50mm f1.8. She's increased the f-stop to try and compensate for it. How can I avoid this? She also has a 30mm macro, but she prefers the photo quality of the 50mm. And she's also wondering if the Makey will do a better job with lens compensation. I tried removing some fringing from Lightroom, but I am a newbie and doesn't work well in some areas. So I am going to ask the viewers for help on this one. Your thoughts on helping and aiding in purple fringing. Usually this is typical in high contrast scenarios and really bright highlights. So some cases you can avoid it, and sometimes it's an optical issue with the lens. So I wouldn't just say, hey, get the 55 Zeiss and it might improve it a little bit, but maybe there's something you can do with the lighting. Maybe incorporate some lighting into your photographs to try and maybe change the direction of the lighting to help ease the chromatic aberration. I'm not an expert at this type of photography, so hopefully someone else can chime in. I know when it comes to Lightroom, I move the slider a certain way to help compensate for like purple fringing. So maybe if you can contact me and send a photograph, then maybe I can see and do something to check and see if I can fix the purple fringing on it. So, but if there's more advice from other viewers, please drop them in the comments and help Sasuke out. Home of Evolution. Hello, so I've watched over 100 videos and I'm still stuck between the a6500 versus the Canon 80D. I plan on starting a YouTube channel and improving my photography skills. I live in Florida, which the Sony overheating concerns me, and I also travel mostly to islands where I'll be bringing the camera. Which camera do you think is the best choice for me? I think the Canon 80D is a really solid option in my honest opinion for most people who are starting a YouTube channel and if you don't need 4K. I had the 80D. What I really liked about it was the flip out screen, and if you get the 18 to 55 STM model lens, you will get good dual pixel autofocus on your face if you're doing that kind of stuff, if you set the camera up, and you need less gear with you to make the stuff work. With the a6500, you might need a secondary monitor because you can't see what you're recording. Also, there's some cheaper ultra wide angle options with the Canon system. Yeah, you can't compare the 10 to 18 from Sony versus the 10 to 18 from Canon in terms of just like aperture, but they're both ultra wides, and the Canon is pretty inexpensive nowadays. So I would say the Canon 80D would be the better choice. If you absolutely wanted a compact system, the Sony makes some sense. But if you don't mind a slightly bigger camera body, then the 80D is a great option. MVTT Chew, I got the Sony a7 for a good deal with a 50mm lens. What are your thoughts on me using it as an intro full frame body? Thank you, love the work. It's great. I haven't personally used it as like an actual camera. I've only used it in the store like many years ago. I wasn't too happy with the EVF, but I'm sure it'll get the job done. A lot of people like that camera. It's pretty inexpensive. Well, I won't say inexpensive, but it's more affordable than the a7 II. But I think it's a great start. Enjoy your camera. Kim Goodall asks, great videos. I learned so much. May I ask your advice? I'm going on a safari in October. I have the a6000 plus 2 kit lenses. I also have the Sigma 30mm f1.4. I would add I have a Nikon P900, which I think gives those power zooms. I'm thinking of adding a 10-18 for those African landscapes to complement the above setup. What do you think? I'm still learning, thanks. I don't shoot like landscapes, so I'm not the best person, so hopefully someone can add to this in the comments. But I think a 10-18 will be a great option to add some additional styles of photos, especially landscape type shots that you wouldn't get with a different style of lens. So no, definitely consider getting a 10-18, especially in certain scenic locations that you might shoot. It's gonna give you some diversity in your photography. So yeah, I think it'd be great, but hopefully someone can chime in and add some more information. Ovidiu Paunescu asks, hi there, I need advice. I want to do live transmission with the a6500. What do I need? You are going to need to buy a capture card. I have one from Elgato, I have one from Avermedia, and I have one that's called the Epiphan Video AV.io 4K, and I'm using that right now, but I'm having a lot of issues with it. It's constantly stopping. I don't know if it's overheating or something like that, or I got to figure out what's going on. It could be a different issue. But that's what I use. I use a capture card, I connect it straight into my camera, and I use OBS software in order to capture something that's live. Exquisite Glow asks, thanks for the video, you're really informative. I was looking into vlogging and went to Best Buy to look at the Canon M series. However, the salesperson said the Sony would be better. That made me question everything. You mentioned in this video that the 6500 and the 6300 had more video options. What should you recommend for vlogging? I would really love to hear from you. Thank you again for making this channel. This is a tough one. I need help from the viewers. Is there anyone out here that's currently vlogging with a Canon EOS M series and you own a Sony a6000 series? Which one do you prefer for vlogging? I need help. I can't give advice if I don't actually have the Canon EOS M's that I'm looking at. So it's really hard it's a really tough judgment call for me. I will say that the dual pixel autofocus technology in the Canon's really good. Had positive experiences with it. Oh, I think that could be the other thing, is that the Canon M series doesn't have actual in-body stabilization, whereas the 6500 does. So that might be something to consider, especially your lens choices. Folks, that's all I got for you in this week's Q&A video. Again, the reviews for the lenses and such are coming around the corner. Just been busy with work. If you have any new questions, please post them in the comments below. And again, I would appreciate if you go ahead and help the others out. I will try and go ahead and post a kit.com post with all the items that were mentioned. There'll be a link for that in the description and in the comments. Just click on that and you'll see all the items that were mentioned in this video. With that said, I'm your host, That One Camera Guy, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.